Hey everyone, and welcome to Redo.Church's live video cast. I'm Dr. Joshua Henson, and we are so glad to have you tonight as we get started on a wonderful journey as we talk about the church and COVID-19 and how it's changed everything that we're doing. And we just wanted to take a moment to welcome each of you here. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. So welcome again to our podcast. And we just hope that you are blessed by our conversation that we had last week with Dr. Craig Bell as we discussed whose voice are you listening to in your life? And so tonight, as we get started, we have a special guest, a good friend of mine. He is now partnering with Rediscover Oikos to be a part of one of our consulting teams as we reach out to coach, to consult Christian leaders. And we are so glad to have Pastor Chris Clem with us out of Highland, Arkansas, with the Highland Assembly of God. And he's a great pastor, great man of God, great friend. And we're going to have a wonderful conversation tonight. So please let us know that you're here. We hope that you're here. We hope that you're blessed tonight. What's happening? People are telling me we have no volume. This is what happens. My wife was just telling me that as well. No fun. Chris,
Yes.
Give me a second, man. Do you have volume? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you just fine.
You can hear me, huh?
I can hear you just fine.
I'm being told across the board that we have lost everything. Have you seen any issues yet?
No.
Dina, do you still have anything?
I'm good.
Give me a second here. I'll work on this.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
All right, we're back online. Wonderful. We had an internet little malfunction for a moment, but we should be good now going on. Hope everybody's well. Please join us tonight. I think we're going to make it. We're going to get through a little bit of an internet glitch there for a moment, but my wife says we're on. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
Craig Bell says we're here. We have people joining us, Chris, all the way from Highlands, Arkansas. Man, how about that? You got your church folks joining us, Pastor Chris.
Right.
We're good to have you guys. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience. You had me so nervous when I started hearing no picture, no sound, no nothing. I have no clue. That was probably a little Facebook thing because Pastor Chris looked as great as he does all the time. So I know I could see his face and he could see my face. So we are so glad to have every one of us tonight as we get started. We have people from Dover, Delaware with us as well. So please go ahead and chime in. Again, we are so glad to have you as we talk about a very important topic, COVID-19 and the church's response. And we have what I feel like, and let me just brag for a moment here. I am glad to have Chris Clem with us tonight. Listen, Chris has got a pastor's heart. I tell him this all the time, that I think he's one of the best pastors I know. He loves people, and yet he's like me, like most people, just trying to figure out and navigate the difficulties of COVID-19. So, Chris, we're so glad to have you, man. Welcome, not only to Redo.Church's live video cast, but thank you as well for joining the team. We are so glad to have you as one of our coaches and consultants. And I just want to encourage you, all of our family over there at Highland, Arkansas, in that area, if you know Chris and you are needing a Christian coach, I want you to reach out to Chris. Check us out on Redo.Church. I can get you hooked up with him as well through there. This guy can transform your life. He can help you. He is there to help serve. And we're doing this together. So we have people from North Carolina. We have Chris there in Arkansas and myself here in Florida. We're going to tag team to help people navigate this crisis. And so welcome. We're so glad to have this great opportunity to meet with each of you today. And so again, welcome. We want to tell you real quick, since my video went crazy and we lost audio for a second, we want to encourage you to go check out our Dream Builders course. This is coming up in just a couple weeks. I want to encourage you right now. This is going to be transformative. We are building a course just for you. This is identifying 4 areas of our lives: confronting our obstacles, discovering our purpose, painting our vision, and I love this last part, constructing a plan for the future. And we want you to be a part of our Dream Builders group coaching course. It is going to transform your life. Go to our website, Redo.Church, click on appointments. You can either schedule a free consultation to talk to me or to Chris or to Craig. We want to reach out and bless you. We want you to be a part of what we're doing. We want to also encourage you as well to sign up for this. Every Monday night starting in August, we are going to have a great conversation about what God has for us. So join us at our Dream Builders course. We're going to believe it's going to bless us. And as we get started today, we're going to start talking about the church. And
I like that. I
Yeah,
think
we're going to
Bible
talk
church is a
about
great idea.
church, right? We're going to talk about how do we navigate this. Just today, I was in a conversation with people about eschatology, and we were talking about the return of Jesus Christ. And we like to talk about the return of Jesus Christ, but we don't want to talk about how that whole pesky thing in the book of Revelation that talks about pestilence and famine and disease and war. It's
Right.
not fun to live it.
Right.
This isn't fun, but
I
it's
am
also
not having
exciting.
fun.
No one's having fun.
No, I love, and Dr. Henson, I love to have fun. I'm one of those people like you. I love to have a good time. This has not been fun. As a matter of fact, today, Sunday, my wife was diagnosed by the doctor with COVID. Today, we got confirmation. We're still waiting for feedback on my test. I brought my Clorox in here with me, so I'm wiping down my desk when I'm done. But we are staying out of the church, staying away from everything. And as a pastor in the midst of, we're walking this out. I had a conference call yesterday with some pastors in North Little Rock. They've got COVID. And they're trying to pastor their church through virtual situations. It is incredibly challenging on many levels. So absolutely.
Yeah, you're right, and that's what's sad. We're seeing it everywhere. If your family hasn't been touched by COVID-19 at this point, you're one of the few at this point, I believe.
Right.
It's close. It's just around. It's circling each of our homes and our families, and it has changed the way we do church.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're talking about tonight. And we want to encourage you to share this out with anyone who's interested in church ministry. Mm-hmm. And we're talking from a pastor's perspective because if I can just challenge everyone who's listening today. One of the things that's being missed in our conversation is to really understand how pastors are being impacted by this, and it's causing undue stress on pastoral ministry. And if our laity could listen today, if our ministry leaders in our congregations can listen, I hope you hear the heart of pastors today as we talk about how do we move forward together, because it's going to require all of us. And so to me, you cannot have any better pastor than Chris Clem to talk about this. And I genuinely believe this. He is a great man, and I brag on him all the time. He knows this is not just for our podcast. This is period. He's a great guy. He loves people. But COVID has tested and even that love. It's stretching us, right?
It is absolutely stretching us. I feel like we've been here 13 years in our church, and there's not even a close number two as far as challenges that we've had to deal with. I know the strain that this has put on me personally, our family, now of course dealing with the physical aspect of it, but also the strain on the church. Right now, you and I've discussed this before, we've got about 20% attendance on our church on Sundays. The rest of it is virtual, which I understand. Those that are at risk or not comfortable coming back, I understand that. We're looking at, we're told that we'll probably see a spike here between September and November. That's a pretty big range.
Wow.
So we're starting to see numbers go up in our area. And a lot of that is because we're rural. And so it's taken a while for us to feel the effects that the rest of the country, like you've been feeling, have started to impact. And so we're now just seeing the significance of it. And it has been a massive, I don't mean a little challenge, I mean a massive challenge.
It's a wake-up call, right?
Absolutely.
It's one of those situations. I feel like we were ready for a few weeks of this. We thought it was going to be temporary. And I don't think many pastors ever thought that we would be now talking to the end of the year just to get through the first part of this thing. Never saw that coming.
No, I met with my leadership team last week, and we were talking about that, and I really feel like that we need to be planning for 6 months. I'm hoping it ends next week, but I feel like strategically we've got to plan 6 months. But I want to tell you, Doc, I was one of those that was, hey, next month, next week, next month, and I came to the conclusion that, this is going to go on for a while. And I don't like that. I'm the last one that wants to say that, but I feel like it's something we're going to have going on with us for a bit. And
so one of the things we're going to be talking about today is, we talk about problems, but we're going to be talking a little bit about how the toll that it's taken on pastors specifically. Sure. Mm-hmm. Hoping that people that are listening to this, especially if you're a lay member, whether you're in the business world or whether you're a church staff pastor or just a leader or Sunday school teacher or Bible study director, whatever it may be, that you'll better understand the role that it's had on pastoral ministry and how this is a moment. My fear long term is that we're going to see a significant walking away from ministry just across the board. And that's scary because if there's ever been a time people need pastors, it's now. We need the church. People need the church. We're hurting as a nation. We're hurting as in our families, and we need to hear the positive news of the gospel. And so if you could just today, Chris, if you could just tell me a few things, what would be the biggest changes that you've noticed since COVID-19? If you could put your finger on it tonight, what are just a few major changes that you've noticed in the pulse of the church or in the ministry of the church over the last number of weeks?
Well, I would say certainly that the mission has not changed, but the methods have. I believe that we have gone almost completely virtual to where, before pre-COVID, we were doing Facebook Live, we were doing streaming. It was honestly an afterthought to me, whether it worked or not. I was glad that it worked, but I didn't really pay any attention to it. I wasn't keeping up with the numbers. To now where it is primarily how people are connecting with us as a church. And hey, if things spike and we have to go back to that for a season, which is something I'm not anticipating, but I am planning for, we realize that that's something we need to invest in. And that was a meeting I had this week where we were dealing with a church on our team about how do we upgrade our media capacity. And so I feel like that is part of the new normal, regardless of if COVID ended next week or not. We would continue to do and invest in our streaming capacity in our media ministries.
That's a very important part of this thing, right? Because it's investment. This is a time that you're pulling back funds, and yet you really need to be investing in specific things.
Sure.
The things that I've noticed is you've figured out what were primary ministries and secondary ministries, what was necessary and what wasn't.
Right.
In our case, the most important thing was our food ministry is just blown up, and every other ministry has disappeared.
Right.
Food ministry has stayed. It's the one essential ministry that we've had.
Well, when the boat's going down, you grab what's important. And I feel like with us as a church in our community, that we've had to really focus on what's really necessary, what's really important. One of the things that we're planning on working on now, one of the things I mentioned to the board last week was that we need to really figure out how we're going to do discipleship virtually.
Yeah.
Which that's such a traditional, intimate thing. How do you do it virtually? And we've got to figure that out, and one of the things that I would say that I've learned also in this season is how much I need other people. People like you to reach out to and others, and having mentors, friends, coaches, people that I can lean on during the season has not just been helpful. It has literally been a lifesaver to me.
Yeah.
Because you feel alone. That's one of the things pastors feel like right now. Let's just be honest. You can't make anybody happy. Yeah. Every decision you make right now is going to frustrate multiple groups.
That's correct.
Some people think you're not taking it seriously enough. Some people think you're taking it too seriously. Some want to wear masks, some don't. And so you find yourself navigating this season where literally groups of people are mad at you all the time.
Yeah.
And I know it's based on fear, but it's still not easy being the recipient of that. And here's what I'm seeing. I talked to you and other pastor friends of mine around the country, and I talked to a pastor of a multi-thousand church last week, and he's dealing with the same challenges we are, church of 300 to 500. So it is just across the board. Every pastor seems to be dealing with this. Same types of challenges.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Hey, and Dr. Hawkins, I'm so glad you're on board with us today. We've got just one of our wonderful professors at Southeastern University with us tonight.
I love Dr. Hawkins.
Yeah, Dr. Hawkins is the man. Hey, Dr. Hawkins, that's a great question. You're gonna see us. That is the very last question we're asking tonight. So that's a good question. He's asking, going forward, what is God speaking to us? What is He doing in the church? And we're going to be working towards that. Because I think it's a very good question tonight, because we're talking about challenges, but the goal tonight is really talk about answers, right? What are the innovations? And so that's really leading into this next question. Innovation is a big topic in the business world. in leadership as a whole. However, we don't talk about innovation in a 2 millennia old institution enough. We're more interested in traditionalism than we are innovation.
Right.
And yet this is forcing innovation. So if you could just like one or two things real quick, Chris, what are you seeing around as you talk to other pastors? What are some quick innovations that you're seeing take place that you feel like are valuable to the church moving forward?
Well, and I'm going to steal this from Carey Nieuwhof because I feel like it's absolutely the truth. The greatest tool that pastoral leaders have right now, other than the spiritual component. So don't get me wrong, I'm not ignoring the spiritual component. Obviously, prayer and having the Holy Spirit helping us is critical. But on the natural side of things, I would say is flexibility.
Yeah.
I think flexibility, in my opinion, is a key. Carey would call it a superpower, and I would agree with that because it's challenging to plan a month out right now. And so you have to realize that things are constantly changing and we have to be flexible. And most pastors, whether they're like me, I'm a high I, at the other personality types, where I can fly by the seat of my pants a little bit and be okay with that, but not like this. This is a whole different level of challenges where things change so rapidly. So you have got to be flexible. And I agree with you. I would say the other thing is recognizing that crisis breeds the opportunity to innovate. And I think that cannot be understated. And I think those that are excelling are innovating.
Yeah.
And those two things, so flexibility and innovation, are absolutely critical. Absolutely.
We have somebody online, Charles Underwood. This is an old friend of my late grandfather's. Brother Charles, welcome tonight to have. He makes this point about the underground church. It's not something we talk about we haven't talked about for a long time in America. See, I think when we talk about innovation, it's really interesting. We're really going back to the New Testament church, right? Where they were innovative. They were making decisions as the need came around. And that's one of the reasons we chose the name for our coaching company, Rediscover Oikos. It's this idea of home, family, that unit, the basics, building blocks of the church, the basic building blocks of our communities, kind of starting back at the beginning, rediscovering what is the foundation of the church. And I'm a firm believer that we're going home. I believe churches are going back to homes. I think you're going to see an empowerment of the family. There's a shaking taking place in discipleship, though, that we have to figure out. I think you're seeing committed believers versus believers who weren't very committed. Those who were committed already are just as strong, if not stronger. Those who were not very committed are falling to the wayside. And this is where Jesus talked about the shaking, right? That sifting process that we're seeing. We're living the sifting process. We don't like to talk about that. That's not fun to talk about and say that there are members of our churches. I'll never forget my grandfather told me something very powerful. He was talking about his brother, who was a large church pastor up in Cleveland, Tennessee, where where the Church of God is located at. And he made a statement. He said, this was back in the 70s. Just think about this now. He said in the 70s, he looked across his very large congregation and he wondered how many people were ready to see Jesus Christ. And that was in the 70s. That was 50 years ago. How many people whose hearts were truly ready for the return of Jesus Christ? And as a pastor, that's been a major concern of mine, right?
Right.
We have created a consumer Christianity, and it is being sifted. So who are the people that are really, really passionate about Christ? And so then that was our next question, actually, about really concerns about the church. And for me, my biggest concern right now is really who are we discipling? I think this has been a litmus test for a failed discipleship model in the American church. That's a big concern. We have been doing event evangelism, and it's all about come to church. And now we're seeing to where if we weren't properly discipling people in 2019, now they're not being discipled at all. And I worry about that for the future. So what do you see about concerns that you have about the current state of the church as we move forward?
Well, here's the deal. You know me, and Dr. Hawkins knows me. I try to be very transparent. This has been the most challenging part of this whole situation for me. The Holy Spirit and I had a talk. It's probably 2 months ago in this. We were a few weeks in, and I really felt in his loving way, he said, how many people have you prepared to be the priest of their home at their house? And I realized in that moment, I just broke down, man. because I have not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, because that is, I feel like, Chris, I've dealt with this overwhelming sense of failure.
Yeah.
That I failed my church. For years. I mean, I've been pastoring for 14 years, and I feel like that I messed up so bad, and young Christians specifically. And, that's where pastors are really dealing with this balance of this immense spiritual load that we care about people so much.
Yeah.
And, we're hurting, and we're hurting spiritually, we're hurting physically, our churches are hurting financially, whatever the needs may be. But more than anything, we're seeing, I don't want to see people that I love and care about miss out on their relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel like, man, we just missed the boat. And so we're going to get to that, really talk about the future, because that's what it's all about. What is God telling us in the future? Because I think that's where we got to really pinpoint moving forward. I do believe that it's the house churches.
Yeah.
God woke me up in March to start this company, to say, you know what, we got to start equipping people again. We got to start coaching people. We got to start building. There's an opportunity to move forward. This is not the end. This is actually an opportunity to do great things. I think this is an opportunity time.
Yeah.
New ministries, new businesses, new vision. This is the opportunity. Instead of looking at everything as obstacles, start looking at them as opportunities, right?
Hey, and here's the thing. When I look at COVID, and when I look at it from the perspective of the church, my concerns, well, let me back up. COVID is an accelerant. If an organization, a business, a school, a church, a family was in trouble pre-COVID, COVID accelerated.
That is true.
What was going to happen.
That's true.
Businesses are gone now that were here pre-COVID. They were already having trouble, some of them.
That's true.
All this did was accelerate that process. If a church was already struggling, COVID, finished it off. But it maybe finished it off 5 years before it would have naturally died anyway.
Exactly.
And so I agree that this has been a wake-up call, but there are going to be churches that don't reopen because of this. There are going to be businesses that don't reopen. But back to your term about innovation, there'll also be businesses born out of this.
Yes. Because
there are those that are looking for the opportunities. And I think for pastors, for leaders in general, we need to deal with the emotion. This is what I tell our folks at the church. Deal with the emotion of what we're dealing with right now, but then move past it. Allow yourself to feel that, but then move past that. Okay, all right, where do we go from here?
Exactly.
And begin to pray and take advantage. I think pastors right now are too isolated.
Yeah.
And they need to begin networking. I think that is a tremendous danger. I think you made the comment that post-COVID, we're going to see a mass exodus from the church, and I agree with that. I think we're going to see pastoral leaders that are just exhausted, that they're emotionally wrung out. And if we don't have relationships with each other and with good supportive people around us, you're going to see a lot of pastors done.
Yeah, that actually brings to the next question. Listen, if everyone's listening, if you're watching the recording, this is the most important part of our discussion tonight. Please listen to we're about to talk about something it's sensitive, but it needs to be discussed. And there's not a platform for us as pastors to talk to our congregation. So, about really the impact of this on the pastoral ministry. Mm-hmm. Isolation is a good word. Isolated from our people, isolated from our leaders. Mm-hmm. Your core, my core has shifted. The people I trusted for leadership advice in our church 3 months ago is not the same as it was today.
Right.
But a lot of times, it's getting better now, but I could think 6 weeks ago, I felt like I was doing it, me and our youth pastor, and against the world, and the feeling of isolation and that stretching, that pulling, where everybody seems to be pulling you in different directions. And the word exhausting is so true. And that is the issue of burnout is a big deal for pastoral ministry. It was already there. You're talking about accelerant. Yeah. If you burn out in 2019, you're in trouble in 2020.
Absolutely.
And that's the fear. And so if there's just one thing that you could just, from a pastor's heart, share to any congregational member, any elder, any Sunday school teacher, anyone in a church, even if you're just riding the pews, not just showing up, or riding online, riding the couch, or whatever it is today, whatever the term may be, if there's something as a pastor that you could just share that you feel like they need to know for their pastors.
Yeah.
These are some of our people. This is, your members, my members, but there's people watching this today that they have a pastor somewhere. What would you want to tell them on behalf of their pastor tonight?
Be patient with me. This is my first pandemic.
There you go. I like that. That's good.
No, I mean, that's true. But I think if someone is a true pastor, they love their people. And this is heartbreaking for a pastor who wants to be with his sheep, take care of his sheep, lead his sheep, and now he can't be with them, or her can't be with them. They're dealing with challenges that there's zero preparation for. Trust me, I'm about to get my PhD in leadership. We haven't taken one class on how to navigate through a pandemic, but we have talked about how to navigate through crisis and conflict. And I would just say to them, they need to pray for their pastors and be patient with them, because if they're a good pastor, their heart is to take care of their sheep, and they're there's a lot of depression right now going on with pastors. I can tell you, I went through about 3 weeks of deep depression in the midst of this. And I will tell you, Dr. Henson, I've never been depressed a day in my life that I've known of. Literally, I don't know that I ever have, but I was in this. And I think it's because there was the realization in the midst of this that things weren't going to go back like I knew them before.
Yeah.
That how I had been trained in ministry, everything that I had done in ministry, all my training was now being flipped around, and I was going to have to lead in a different way. I was going to have to pastor in a different way, and I had to reconcile that. Also, I think to your point, there was the guilt of I've not prepared these folks enough for this. So these pastors are dealing with all that, and we don't know when this is going to be over.
Yeah.
And I have another thought, if you don't mind me tagging on to the end of this.
You're good.
I think there's going to be PTSD from this event.
Yeah.
If it ended tomorrow, there's going to be post-traumatic stress that's going to carry with not only congregants, but also with pastors. Because like you said, there have been people that have been supportive through this process, but there are also people that have been negative. And now you've got to reconcile that going forward. And this virus has caused deep fractions. The riots and the different movements have caused fractions in churches. And now you're going to have to navigate people through that. And what a challenge. What a challenge. So I would tell people that your pastor loves you, but be patient with them, pray for them, encourage them.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of encouragement helps. And, I think that's one of the keys here where we got to love on each other. There's so much negativity. It's not a time for negativity. This is a time to move forward. It's a time to love each other. Because I think at the end of the day, we find ourselves just in this chaotic world. It's just so chaotic. And the church is supposed to be that safe place, that sanctuary in the midst of the storm. And it's been ruptured. I worry about pastors. I do. It's my heart. So many of them, I fear for the future as we move forward of how many pastors we are already on a decline. We're already losing pastors. The church was losing pastors left and right, and specifically younger pastors, which is really worrisome, because not only were we dealing with the retiring pastors, we're also dealing with young pastors, meaning there wasn't anyone to fill the voids. And we now have churches that are going empty with no pastors. And I think there's a shift that's going to take place, and I believe it's actually probably going to be a good thing. Yeah. So that's what we're going to really move into today and really talk about. The future of all this is called stress on pastors, on church members, and there's this divine. But this is really God's doing some stuff here, you know. And no one likes being pruned. I preached a sermon a long time, probably a couple of years ago, that my folks thought I was nuts when I preached it. But we were talking about the pruning process in John 15, where the scriptures talk about, or 14 talks about all the pruning process. And I said, envision what it's like to be the plant. Mm-hmm. To be pruned, to go through that pruning process, it's painful. Mm-hmm. And when God prunes us, it's a painful process. And there's a pruning that God's using. I don't believe God brought COVID to us. I think God knew COVID was coming.
Sure.
And because he's God, he knows everything.
Right.
But I think he allows these seasons to really prune the church, to cleanse the church, to prepare the church, to see who the real church is. It's the separating of the wheat and the tares. And
Sure.
we are moving into a great opportunity. And you talked earlier about new businesses starting.
Sure.
I believe there's going to be new churches, new ministries. It will not look the same
Right.
as it does today or as it did 6 months ago. And so there's an opportunity. And listen, there's a lot of depression. I get that, man. I was so excited. I told you this, man. This has been the first month or a month and a half of this was so fun for me because I was getting exhausted on traditional church. I've been tired of traditional church for forever. I was sick of it. And it got so boring to me. I'm like, come on, let's do something new. I didn't expect this. This wasn't what I meant by do something new, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the online. Right. I really did. I think I hit this point to where this isn't ending. The vacation is over. What do we do now? Right? That moment when we started transitioning back into church. And in our case, we're parking lot in church and everything else. And so there was this moment to where I said, okay, now it's no longer fun. It's no longer just being innovative. Now, what is long-term implications of where we're going for here? Because the church will never be the same again. But I believe it's an opportunity for revival. I really believe that God wants to do something big. And so I wanted to take the last 10 minutes or so of our conversation today and really ask that big question. And so we do this segment, this wonderful, fun segment. I love it. It's where we kind of end and where we go from here. It's really asking the question of what is God saying to us? And so join us for this wonderful... Big question today here. So we're asking this huge question. What is God saying to his church in 2020? Because I believe God's got a message. And so we're going to talk about this for a while, Chris. Okay. If you could just really think through this, what do you think God's saying to us in this moment?
Well, when you look back, and I've thought about this a lot, when you look back in 2019 and the first part of 2020, strongest economy in the history of our country. As a church, as a pastor, we dedicated a new building in November. Our numbers were up, our giving was up, everything was rocking along, and then COVID hit. And I think, like you said, God didn't cause this, but I think he's used this as a shaking. And he has reminded me that he is the only rock.
That's good.
He is the only sure foundation. We sing those songs and we say all of our stuff, but it doesn't mean anything until you're in the middle of it.
That's right.
And I think God has reminded us how quickly in 2 months we went from the strongest economy in our history to one of the weakest.
Yeah.
And that's how quickly things can change. And so that will forever be, hopefully forever be in my mind. And so I think we have to remember the mission of the church.
Yeah.
It's not changed, but I think that the methods of the church will probably change. And we have to realize I've still got to reach all those people that still call our church home and others. I mean, right now, Doc, I've got people watching every week from Kansas, from Texas, from different parts of the country. My sermon Sunday, I checked a few minutes ago, we had about 1,500 views of the thing. Our church is, we average 3 to 315 on a Sunday morning. So yeah. God's obviously doing things. It's just not the way we're used to it.
Yeah.
And so I would say that God is still moving. He's not surprised by this. I think we need to innovate.
Yeah.
That's our job. Accomplish the mission, improvise, adapt, and overcome, as they teach us in the military. And so I think that's what's going on right now. And so it's a heart check.
Yeah.
Am I so married? I'm going to step on somebody's toes, but I think this is important. Am I so married to the methods and my way of doing church that I can't move past that?
Yeah. There's a great question. Nicole's asking a question I'm going to put up here on the screen. She asked this question. Oh, it's Keisha. I recognize that face for a second there. Good to see her. Hey, so it says, how do you help a pastor that is stuck? Doesn't want to move forward, and in fact, trying to regress and do things pre-COVID, even though it's clear that we need to move forward. Oh boy. So everyone love on your pastor, because he or she is going to need that love at the very moment, because obviously there's a frustration. That's a good question, though. How do we help that pastor?
Man, that's a very good question. I think, honestly, he's probably not going to hear that from a congregate. That's where a mentor or a coach, somebody can come up beside him and put their arms around him, somebody that he trusts, and say, look, we need to have a real conversation. Most of us, I have said, I can't wait till we can go back to how we were doing things before. I think the realization is, like I talked about a few minutes ago, that even though a semblance of that might happen, there's still going to be a lot of people that are going to be doing virtual. They're not going to be back. And if we don't improvise, we will lose the opportunity to minister to those people.
Oh, that's a big term, because we are talking about opportunity, but we're not just talking about opportunity on the business side, the church side, the individual opportunity. Yes. These families that, Jesus teaches us that he left the 99 to go minister to the one.
Right.
And right now, online learning is teaching us, or online preaching and teaching and all that kind of stuff, is teaching us to go reach the 99.
Right.
And we're losing the one. We're going, oh, they may not be believers or they're not faithful. And yet Jesus left everything to grab the one. And that is probably going to be the most difficult thing moving forward, is how do we grab the one, right?
Right.
And I think, to Keisha's question here, I think it's so important for us to consider this, is, to these pastors. And if you're a pastor out there and you're clinging to yesterday, yesterday doesn't exist. And if you understand that you just realize that God's pulled your safety net out from under you, now it's time just to, whatever it is, move forward. Yeah. And the only failure at this point is the failure not to do anything.
Right.
You're going to mess up. You're going to stumble. Something's not going to work. Your technology is going to freeze up on you for a second, because technology does that. Right. Your live stream's not going to work. People aren't going to participate. You just keep doing what you got to do to get out there and do something different. Yesterday does not exist. I think about what the scripture teaches us, and it kind of tells us about that. The Bible tells us not to take no thought about tomorrow, right? And also, Paul says, listen, forgetting those things that are behind. So we see Jesus says, don't try to put all your stock in tomorrow. And Paul says, forget the things in the past. But then there's this momentary presence where you start stretching, that pressing, that stretching, you're reaching. And we're in a stretching time right now. This is where God's stretching us to do something new, right? Yeah. Whatever that is, and whatever it looks like.
I would agree with that. Old wine, new wineskins. I mean, study that scripture. And that we have to be flexible right now. And I think if someone has not learned that in this environment, they're really going to hit hard, because this has been such a stressing, again, talking about flexibility, where you've got to be willing to pivot. You've got to be willing to change. The highlight for me in this season has to watch my church staff. You've said the same thing about yours. I've seen my team members, all of them step up. Our key volunteers have stepped up, and it's been the highlight for me. Yeah, they've encouraged me by watching how they've continued to serve and lead. And I think that should motivate us, but we would need to recognize that if we were going to try to go back to old methods, it's not going to work. You don't have any control over that.
Exactly. It's bigger than us. And that's a beautiful thing. I think God, as we talk about what God's doing to the church, the local church, the big church, however you want to look at this at the moment, as we go forward, I think that's what it comes down to, is every method we've been trained on in seminaries and seminars and everything else isn't where we're at now. Now it's a matter of, I feel like we're going kind of old school now, in a sense, to where it's back to, let's build the families. Let's build our families. Let's get local. Let's get small. And so instead of the large gatherings, which everyone has been telling you that's the way to go, get 1,000, get 2,000, get 10,000. And now it's, man, if you get a group of 15 together in a home, that may be the answer. Yeah. And then there's the persecution. Listen, I'm convinced, and this is where the alarmist is ding, 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 flash. Like, I believe that right now we're dealing with institutional and governmental, so you see some oppression starting to hit the church. Mm-hmm. And now we've been dealing with cultural oppression for a while. Mm-hmm. I believe it's getting very close to turning to full-on persecution. I would say in the next 10 years, we are going to begin to really deal with legitimate, overt persecution as Christians, specifically born-again believers in America. And we read that, we go, wait a second. Do you realize China has been praying for the church in America to be persecuted for decades? Because they know that there's a saying in China, the blood of the martyr is the seed of the church. That there's a revival coming in America
Mhm.
And the global South is now ministering to the global North. You see missionaries coming from Africa and South America. They're coming to America to evangelize us,
Mhm.
right? There's this great opportunity to do ministry, and I believe it's getting back to finding people who are passionate, that are willing to host home churches, to be willing to host Bible studies,
Mhm.
to be willing to host a Zoom session, or
Mhm.
to do a Facebook Live. I know I have Miss Barbara Jack online with me. She's one of my church folks. I love Miss Barbara. She's one of my favorite people at Crossroads. Miss Barbara took it on herself. She does every Thursday night, does a Bible study.
That's awesome.
That's all you just need, people that are willing to get their voice out, new voices. If the old voices are gone now, this is an opportunity for new voices. And so I want to tell everybody out there, Keisha asked the question, how do pastors want to see it's important to meet with just a few of the leaders, but not just that choice few, kind of expanding the tent. Pastors, if I could tell you for a moment, expand your tent, find new voices. Because there's voices in your church right now that have an opportunity to be ministered, to be used as an instrument of ministry that you didn't realize. Young people right now, if you do still have young people in your church, which, oh boy, that's been a major issue. Young families. Young people are here now. If they're in your church, use them. Do media with them, man. They could do the media for you. They don't need your help. They know more of it than you do anyway, right? So.
Look, I had a meeting 2 days ago with our worship pastor, our media pastor, and a mega church, which, by the way, one of the things I'd like to encourage some of our smaller churches, we're a rural church, but a lot of the mega churches, the larger churches that are used to doing streaming media and all that, we got on the phone with these guys. We were there for an hour with them. They had 2 of their staff members on the phone with us, wouldn't let us pay them anything. Mm-hmm. They said, this is our mission as a church for the Big C church.
Yeah.
This is our way of giving back. And so they're helping just lots of smaller churches get up to speed with what they do every week.
Exactly.
And so we had a great conversation with them, but here's what they told us. They said, listen, you're going to need some volunteers, because we were talking about cameras and streaming and those kind of things. And what we recommend is find an 18-year-old.
Exactly.
They have just hired on staff full time an 18-year-old to run their video department.
Exactly.
And I thought, wow,
crazy.
Because he said they just know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so you're right. I mean, reach out to some of those that maybe in the past you've had that were overlooked in the body. And one of the things one of my friends mentioned to me recently that I've thought about a lot was, look at those in your church that are really with you right now and those that aren't. You don't need to pick on the ones that aren't, but just be aware of their situation and really invest in the ones that are with you.
That's it.
And look
always focus on those that are with you.
That's right. And invest in those guys and empower them, because they're the ones that are going to stick it out long term. Because I agree with you.
That's exactly it.
This may not end quickly, but the mission has not changed. So let's innovate.
Exactly. Exactly. And, hey, if you got to be in homes, Chris, I've told you how, ironically, I told you guys this at the beginning of COVID, not thinking about it. I've been a firm believer for a while that the church is moving to house churches again. I believe we're about to have a major house church movement birth out of this networking of small churches, because it becomes about building a bigger kingdom than our kingdom. What happened for too long is all about our kingdom, right? Mm-hmm. COVID has killed our kingdoms. Right. It's demolished the kingdom. So now it's back to building the big kingdom, right? Building the kingdom of God. And so whatever it looks like, of course we got debt we have to deal with, and we just got to give that to God. We got to give debt to God and our budgets to God, and just say, hey, you know what? Let's just keep doing the mission. Let's keep moving forward. And whether it's the small church running 15 out in the country, or the inner city church, or the mega church, man, I want every church to be successful. We're not competing with each other. And that's one of the most beautiful things that I've seen out of all of this, is the competition's without the window now. It's not about cannibalizing local churches. We're all in this together. We're helping each other. I've worked with Lutheran pastors on their media stuff. I've worked with Assemblies of God, Church of God. Anybody's willing to listen. Hey, let's just talk through it. Let's see how we can do it better. Sure. Because this is where we're at today, and it's to me, it's an exciting time. And so as we really talk about this, as we start circling the wagons here and wrapping this thing up, really, so we find ourselves here Last week we talked about the need for new voices in our own lives. And Christians were struggling. It's one of those things, and we have so many outside voices speaking into us right now, whether it's the media, whether it's social media, whether it's the radio, wherever we're getting our news. It just paints a really depressing picture. And we kind of sometimes forget that God's still in control in every bit of this. He's in control. He knows what's happening. Man, it's a beautiful time to be a believer. So, Chris, as we talk about this, we're launching this whole deal with this whole idea of speaking to people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about what God is saying. If you could just wrap this thing up for us, and we're going to open the floor to you in a minute and kind of share your story or anything you want to tell about your church or recruit for Rediscover Oikos, whatever you want to do. But if you feel like God was speaking one thing to his church that he's spoken to you that you would like to share with our audience today, that you feel like we need to hear today, what would that one thing be?
Last Sunday, I preached a message that was really on my heart because I felt like it was from the heart of God. I think we're asking the wrong question right now. I think I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of people going, "Hey, is Jesus coming back tomorrow? Are we about to take the mark of the beast? What's happening?" And I'm not saying it's a bad thing that people are thinking about that, but I don't think that's the right question. I think the right question that we need to be asking right now is not when is Jesus coming back. The right question is, am I ready to meet him? And I think in the midst of COVID, in the midst of everything we're dealing with right now, our job is to, as pastors, is to not only make sure we're ready and our family is, but to remember that he is coming back. I mean, Peter said it, the end of all things is near. So we need to live our life on mission. Whether Jesus comes back tomorrow or 10 years from now or 100 years from now, he's coming back. Our job is to prepare people and live with that sense of urgency. And I think, Jesus gave us the mission to make disciples. And so pastors, what you need to do right now is set aside your past theories of how you've done things. Yeah. That's over. Embrace that. And then recognize that you've got a new paradigm and a new mission to accomplish, and you need to ask God to help you how you're going to do that. Yeah, and I would say that's probably the best thing I can say.
Yeah, so it goes really, again, that idea of be flexible. Yep. That you're going to be flexible. You got to listen to what God's saying for your church. Yeah, for me, I had this moment of, I cut a video a couple weeks ago where I had just finished a double memorial service for a couple who had passed away in our congregation. Wow. And I was wearing a mask all day. My eyes were glassy, shot red. And so I cut a quick video where I just felt my spirit that I needed to move to a parking lot services. And my eyes were glassy. And my mom calls me and says, "Josh, have you been crying?" I hadn't been crying. I felt like it probably, but I hadn't been crying. It looked like I was just exhausted. I was wiped out. I was tired. My wife thought I was going to, in the middle of it, she says, "Is he resigning without telling me that we're resigning?" It was one of those kind of just crazy things. But this is something that I heard a pastor 2 days before said they were dealing with a major crisis in their church with COVID, and it was all over the media, and it was just horrible. And he said, "I just failed to read the tea leaves." And I don't know how to read tea leaves, but I think what he was saying was, I missed some stuff. I missed a couple little markers to where if I would have been more reactionary and just proactive and just move forward, I'd have been okay. Right. Well, that's what God kind of spoke into me. Look around, pay attention to what's happening, and don't be afraid just to do something and be spontaneous, be flexible. I told my church a couple times I'm making executive decisions. Sometimes I don't have anyone to ask. I'm just doing it. If I don't have time to go and argue with people over, I'm just have to move forward. We're just have to do this. Being flexible. I'm being authentic with people. I'm being real. I'm trying to be as a good of communicator as I possibly can, telling people not only what we're doing, but why we're doing it.
Right.
And just being honest and authentic. This is why I'm doing it. This is why we're doing what we're doing. But now I'm with you, man. I think the key for us moving forward is we have got to get back to the basics of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I love it. Am I ready to meet Jesus? Whether he comes back tomorrow or another 1,000 years is irrelevant. Am I ready to meet Jesus? And I agree with that. And so I get back to the gospel message and let God deal with everything else.
And who cares if the way they hear the message is from you behind a pulpit, or you in a parking lot, or you online? I mean, the thing we've got to remember is when our Bible was written, they weren't going to church every Sunday.
Exactly.
It's not about the method. Jesus said, go make disciples, and he didn't say go make disciples and here's the 10 things you need to do. You need to sit in a circle and you need to go to this place. And he gave us the mission. He didn't give us the method. So methods will change.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Don't be married to your methods. Innovate with the mission and say, all right, God, the mission hasn't changed. Can I digress for a second and use an illustration that helps me? I don't know if we're going to have football this fall or not. Hopefully we are. Obviously, I'm a Cowboy fan because God's team is important, and I feel like everybody needs to watch his team play. But here's the thing I've learned about playing sports: if the opponent changes their strategy, you have got to innovate with that.
Yeah.
You try to keep running the same plays, and they block you every time. If we're watching a sports game, we go, well, that's just dumb. Why don't they try something different? I think as a pastor, sometimes we do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
If you're doing something that's not working, do something else.
That's it.
Innovate.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Be willing to make the adjustments. And I think one of the keys here is there are still best practices, right?
Sure.
At work. Right. Oh, Lord. Now you got people upset about the Cowboys. There we go. Oh, boy. Anyway, God's team. hey, now you got to worry about Washington because they're now the football team, right? So, that they're pulling that from the Cowboys. Anyway, so, there are best practices, and that's why we need each other. We need to have other voices in our lives to help us make these decisions. Sometimes you got to make a decision on an island. I get that. I've made quite a few on an island. But there's other situations where I just need somebody to help me, give me advice. Okay, what do I do now? What are you doing? Sitting down to talk to other pastors in your community, your church leaders, trusted voices. Listen, I'm not listening to naysayers right now. There's enough of them. I don't need you to tell me what's wrong.
Right.
I need you to give me solutions at this point. I'm listening to the solutions people.
Right.
People who are, I'm not listening to the same people as I was 6 months ago. I don't care about your problems anymore. I want to focus on solutions because the problems are way too big at this point. We're not going to argue about the stuff that we argued about 6 months ago and who's going to be in control and who's going to do this. No, how do we help people? And it's frustrating. It's difficult. But hey, that's what we're going to do now. So we got to let God speak into us. And I did something very powerful this week, and this is because of my wife, and she's amazing. I took a vacation.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't call you for a whole week. I didn't call you for a whole week. You're welcome.
You didn't. And I never take – this is something I've just learned in the last 2 years. I've been pastoring for 14 years, and just in the last 2 years, I actually, for the first time, ever took 7 days off. I just never have done that. Not good, right? That's not a good thing. But I'm learning, So I think I took 6 days. That's good for me. I feel good. I still had to work a little bit. But anyway, take time off, Pastor, wherever you're at. Church leader, let your pastor take off. Take off. Get away. Take a Sunday off. Let somebody else speak. Listen, if your church is running 20% capacity, it doesn't matter. They're going to be there. They're going to love you when you get back. They're not going anywhere. If they've made it through COVID, they're going to be with you now. The people that are with you in service right now are going to be the ones that are going to stick with you, period. Just do your thing, man. Love them. Get some rest. And I think if we do that, everything else gets better. And listen to new voices in your life. And we're going to, vacations are from God. Keith said, you all right? I love that. They are from God, right? I love that. So that's a good thing. And so we just want to encourage all of our church leaders. Hey, listen, if you're not a church leader and you're a member of the church, it's okay to take time off. Yeah. I recommend it. Now don't do like some of the folks at Crossroads. I'm fussing for a second as a pastor. Don't be at the beach every Sunday. Chris doesn't have that problem. He lives out. They go into the river in Arkansas, right?
Right.
We go to the beach everywhere. Go to Disney. It's all right. I went there. It's okay. But don't go every Sunday. Right. Focus. Be online. Your pastors are paying attention. Who's listening? Engage. Ask how you can volunteer. There are ways to volunteer that do not happen in a building. And so let's get involved. Let's keep working. God's going to do some great things.
Yep.
Revival's taking place. I believe that. I've been hearing reports all over the place about, even in California, how revival is taking place. In Minneapolis, when they had all the
Mhm.
protests and all the pain in that community, God brought healing, and there's a revival taking place. We don't hear that on news. They're not going to tell you about that on the news. Let's focus on good stuff. So let's end with this. Rediscover Oikos. Just want to tell you to love on somebody. Love on your pastor. So tonight, it's late. Don't do it tonight. Tomorrow morning, text your pastor. Just tell them you love them. All right. Is that all right?
Yep.
That's a good thing, right?
And let me say this, Dr. Henson. Right now, a lot of the contact these pastors are getting, and I'm not one of those, but I know there's a lot of those that are getting negative comments. Usually when they hear from somebody right now, it's not good.
Exactly.
And
I agree.
just love on your pastors.
Yeah,
Let them
I
know,
agree.
"Hey, I'm thinking about you. I just want you to know I'm praying for you today." That
Exactly.
will go a long way right now in helping them.
That's good stuff. I agree completely. Let's just love on each other.
Yeah.
Reach out to people in your church, your church family. You haven't seen them, love on them. We just need to love on each other.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
So we're getting ready to wrap this thing up. I want to encourage you really quickly. Number one, Chris, thanks so much for being with us, man.
Thanks for having me.
I love this guy, man. He is a great pastor. When I grow up, I'm going to be as good of a pastor as Chris Clem. That is my goal in life.
Wow.
He is a phenomenal man of God, and I fell in love with him the first time I met him. I knew that guy's going to be in my life for a while, so hopefully for a very long time.
Yeah.
And he is partnered up with us with Rediscover Oikos. As a matter of fact, the guy I had on last week, Dr. Craig Bell and Chris Clem, these two guys were the two that I felt in my spirit that I wanted on my team to help us build this business. Why? Because their heart is to love people, help people. And I want to encourage you today, reach out to me if you're interested in our Dream Builders course. If you're at Highland, hey, Pastor Chris is going to send it our way. We're all doing it together. It's our first course. We're developing it. It's going to be awesome. He's going to start teaching some of them as well very soon. We want to get you plugged in. So direct message us. We want you to be a part of it. Reach out to him about it. We want to bring you into our Rediscover Oikos family. It's going to be wonderful. Pastor Chris, do you have anything you want to end with tonight, man?
No, I'm just excited about what you're doing, Dr. Henson. I think this is so needful for folks that are trying to grow and develop. And, we talk about the body of Christ and how we need each other, and God had made us that way. And I think COVID has reminded us more than ever that we can't make it by ourselves. We just can't. And we need people around us to support us and help us. And just thankful for what you're doing. That's
and listen, if I need somebody to speak into my life, Chris is the kind of guy I want to have speak into my life. He has a heart of gold. He loves people, and I told him this. I said, I wish I loved people as much as you do, and but he does. And so I want to encourage you, if you need a Christian coach, listen, we're here to help people. And is there a fee? Yes, because everything requires investment. But we want to work with you. We want to get you to be a part of our team. We want to help you. People need help. People need a voice in their lives. They need somebody speaking to their lives. Dream Builders may be for you. And so we want to tell you about that. Come check out our website. Chris is on there. He is now on there. His big, lovely, beautiful smile is there. Go read his bio. Go check out my brother Craig Bell's bio as well. He's awesome. And ourselves. Find out what we're doing. It's going to be pretty cool stuff. So God bless you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Chris, we're done for the night, man. I am actually going to play a few of the videos because supposedly we had some tech issue in our first about 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm going to play those really quickly. Everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. We are so glad you're here. Hey, Chris, thank you for being with us, my friend. You're going to be back on later on, right? We'll have you back in a couple weeks, man. God bless you guys. Appreciate you. Love you, buddy.
Love you too. Thank you.
Man.
Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Dr. Joshua Henson with Rediscover Oikos. Do you wonder if Christian coaching is really for you? Is it really worth the investment? Well, I have a question for you. Do you have a dream that God has given you? Do you have a vision for your future? Are you interested in starting a new business, or you'd like to see a new change in your life? Well, we have a great opportunity for you. It's called Dream Builders. Beginning the first Monday of August, we have a class just for you that is designed to help people who are transitioning to a new season in their life to better discover what God has for them. So we want to encourage you to be a part of our Dream Builders group class. It is a wonderful opportunity to see what God has for you. Come check us out on redo.church online. God bless.